After a SpaceX mission, Elon Musk suddenly closes down all his businesses and disappears. 8 years later, an old Musk-owned factory begins to operate again. You find a lucky golden ticket inviting you for a tour of the factory. I stared at the entrance, still in awe of my luck. The crowd behind me shuffled anxiously, waiting for a sight of him, just a single glance of the man that had been missing for 8 years. Next to me were the other 4 golden ticket winners, their faces a mix of excitement and fear. We were about to enter a reclusive genius's lair and uncover the secrets that the entire world had been anxiously waiting for almost a decade. The massive gates burst open, yet no human greeted us. Instead, a drone flew out, a screen bearing his likeness. "Please, follow me," he, or it, said, and the crowd's reaction was a mixture of surprise and disappointment. 8 years, and the man never even bothered to meet them in person? We followed the drone regardless, feeling the gates shut soundlessly behind us. The factory was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Machines building machines building machines. And I never saw a single human being. The factory seemed entirely unequipped for even the basics of human existence. I couldn't even spot a bathroom, which was soon remarked upon. "No pisser in sight," one winner remarked scornfully. "You'd think he'd at least cater for someone needing a shit." A young woman next to him chided him. "You'd think you'd at least have some damn manners. No one asked you to come here." A teenager, the youngest of the 5, walked between them. He put his arms around their shoulders. "Come on, guys, don't start the fighting just yet. This is already too much like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory for my liking." The last golden ticket winner snorted. "Oh, please, I can't wait for a rousing tune from the robotic Oompa Loompas." "Oh, there'll be plenty time for that," a voice said, echoing across the factory. Everyone gasped. Even I did, in spite of myself. We all looked upwards, and the great Elon Musk stared back down at us, standing on a board hovering several meters above us. It looked like he hadn't aged a day. "Sorry about the grand entrance," he continued, slowly floating down to their level. "It's really the only way to get around here." He opened his hand, revealing 5 metallic spheres, 1 for each of them. "Please put it in your right ear," he said, turning around. "And follow me." I held the sphere in my hand, reluctantly inserting it into my ear. Immediately, the panel I was standing on dislodged and lifted me into the air. I cried out in surprise and lost my balance. But the panel-turned hoverboard corrected my every movement. The others had similar experiences, equal parts impressed and nervous. The hoverboard seemed to rely on thought, not positioning, like we literally controlled them with our minds. He began to fly towards the interior cavern of the factory, motioning for us to follow him. One by one, we all formed into a line behind him. "Splendid," he said, noting our progress. "You've all got the hang of it." We descended further and further into caverns, which slowly revealed their enormous size. "By the way, please, in any circumstance, do not remove your spheres," he said, looking over his shoulder at us. "The machines won't like that," he said, gazing at his creations. He shook his head. "No, the machines won't like that one bit." We all descended through the factory, machines upon machines upon machines. I couldn't stand the silence any longer. I couldn't help but think, just what the hell was he doing here? "I'm sometimes curious about that myself, really," he said, like he'd predicted my question. "What do you mean?" I asked, suddenly anxious. This was not welcome information when you were hovering above a mechanical fortress. "These machines are not what they seem." I stared down at them. They seemed insatiable. More so, they seemed alive. "Why am I here, Elon?" I asked him quietly. He simply shrugged. I asked myself the same question. The further down they went, the more massive the factory became. Exponential growth. "Those machines, it's like they are me," he continued, almost to himself. "Can you understand that?" I did not know what to say. We flew in silence, the sounds of industry almost too loud to bear. "Where are we going, Elon?" "These hoverboards really are quite something, I think you'll find," he replied, glancing down at his own. "Quite a moving allegory." "Elon." "See, they make you think that you're in control," he continued, "but really they're just calling all the shots. They just convince you otherwise." I stared down at my board. I moved it freely through the air a few times, just to make sure. I knew I was controlling it. I simply wanted to follow Elon. Where else would I go? That's the beauty of it. Why force someone to do something when you can just convince them that they wanted to all along? He said. No one is forcing me into anything. I used to think that too, he replied, which is kind of why you're here. He gazed at me, as if peering into my soul. Tell me, where is everyone else? He asked me softly. I looked around. All the other ticket winners, they were all gone. I was alone with Elon and his insatiable machine. I felt something inside of me, something deep, something primal, something screaming. See, I put a part of myself in these machines, my own version of AI, if you will. I saw his face light up, his eyes glow. And the smarter the machine becomes, the less human I feel, he said, smiling apologetically. It looked forced, and while I did it all to save humanity from themselves, ourselves sorry, every day that goes by I wonder more and more, why bother? Why bother at all? The hoverboard slowed and he looked to his right. It would seem we have arrived, he said as we neared what seemed like the core of the factory. It looked alive enough to have a heartbeat. Our hoverboards floated to the center of the room, attaching themselves to the floor and increasing in size and morphing, becoming comfortable chairs. If you'll excuse the gravitas, he said, motioning around the room and smiling, I feel like a good discussion requires a good setup. The room seemed to pulsate in rhythm with the factory. And now, if you would be so kind, he said, leaning back in his chair, I have just one question for you. He clasped his hands. Why is the human race worth saving?